So my presentation today, I've got two parts to my presentation. The first, I actually ran into Will Sonic yesterday on Route 7. I didn't literally run into him, but I figuratively ran into him. I was driving down the road going to look at a house, and he was right in front of me. So I gave him a call when I was in there, and I said, what should I talk about? So he said the market, so I'll talk a little bit about the market. And then I'm going to actually continue with what I had talked about the last meeting, which was contingencies. All right, so I posted on Facebook the other day some information that Zillow had sent out, and it was for the 20147 zip code. I can do it for all of your zip codes. You tell me what zip code you're in, and I can prepare market updates for you, okay? In the last year, the prices have gone up 15.6%. So from October of 2020 to October of 2021, prices have gone up 15.5%. It's pretty great. Everyone's thinking market's going to crash. As long as the government keeps their act together, I don't think we'll have a recession. And we expect the prices to go up somewhere between 6 and 8%. In 20147, it looks like it's going up 6%. So if you know someone who's thinking about buying a house and thinks they're going to wait until the market prices come down, they might be waiting a while. And if the prices come down, interest rates are going to go up. So they're still going to pay the same amount on a house. So in my post I said, would you like to earn $36,000 in a year, or would you like to pay $36,000 more on a house? It's your choice. Okay, so that's the real estate market in a nutshell. At our last meeting, I talked about contingencies, what a contingency is. And I was very excited that Christina loved it because, you know, you get nervous whenever you're in front of an attorney, always, right? So it's the yes but. So a contingency is a yes but. So what I thought I would talk about today is what happens when I list your home for sale, and what are the steps that happen. So once we've signed the documentation, there's a couple things I do. We order the HOA docs at the very beginning. The reason I do that is because we want to have them on hand when we have a buyer, because a buyer has 3 days within which to walk away from a contract once they've received the HOA docs. Well, if I don't order them till we get a contract, now they have the 2 weeks that the HOA takes plus 3 days. So do you want to lose a client in 3 days, or do you want to lose a client in 2 weeks and 3 days? I want to lose them in 3 days so we can get right back on the market. Okay, so that's one of the first things I do. In addition to that, we're also looking for any repairs that are needed, because if you've ever had to deal with an HOA, they are horrible, and they will find all the problems when you go to sell your house. Okay, so we find out what the violations are so that you have time to get those fixed as you're getting the buyer before we go to closing, okay, because you don't want to wait till last minute for that either. In addition to that, I order photos. So when you pay me, I order the HOA docs on your behalf. You pay the HOA docs, but I order them on your behalf. My office staff keeps it so that they can go out right away. We order photos for your house. Not only is it photos, but it is videos. Okay, so we do all of that. I pay for that. I handle all of that. And then we market your house. So marketing in today's world includes social media. It includes old school stuff like postcards, not newspapers, because I don't know when the last time I've seen a newspaper was. So we do postcards, we do we do social media. We also, we have Facebook groups, realtor Facebook groups that we talk to each other about, and we're really heavily pushing your property there, okay? I got those. We also put it on MLS. So our MLS system is called Bright MLS. Bright MLS has something that's called an IDX feed. Please don't ask me what IDX means. I have no idea. But what it does is it brings all of the information about your home to Zillow, Trulia, Redfin. Any company that you can think of will now have access to that property so that we can mass expose it, okay? So we do that. Once we go under contract, once we get a buyer from your house, actually once we have an offer or offers, I talk to the lender. I would call Anthony up and say, hey Anthony, I got this offer for Joe and Sue. I need some information on them. One time I called the loan officer and I said, hey, I'm calling about Joe and Sue. And she said, who? I said, Joe and Sue. Who? And in my head, I'm thinking, what are you, an owl? Like, who? You don't know your client? Okay. That was the only time I have ever had a loan officer not know when I called them up and said the names, who didn't know who I was talking about. That was a huge red flag to me. So in that scenario, what we did was we had them speak to another lender to confirm that they could qualify. The market wasn't hot back then. Imagine having your house off the market with a loan officer who doesn't know what's going on, and 30 days out, you have to put it back on the market because they couldn't afford the house, right? Vinay's shaking her head. She's like, no, right? Nobody wants that. So we solve those problems in advance. If the lender gives, now there's no guarantee that that's gonna go through, but if I've got good vibes from the lender, I tell my clients that. If the lender doesn't return my phone call, what do you think is gonna happen if there's a problem with that transaction? If they're not returning my phone call at the beginning, it's like a first date. If the first date's not good, it just gets worse from there, okay? So you wanna make sure that the lender that you're working with does a great job. So once we pick the contract that we're gonna work with, we've talked to the lender. Even though I'm not the buyer agent, I have to have a good rapport with that lender because he's the one providing the money and I need it to close, right? And my seller needs it to close. So I make sure that I stay in contact with the lender. I get him any information that he needs. I've had scenarios where the buyer's agent was horrible. I end up just working with the lender to get everything done. The goal is to get the house to closing. We're always looking to get the transaction to closing. So sometimes you have to go out of your way and do things that that need to be done if the other agent's not doing it. Okay. So then we monitor contingencies, and this is what we were talking about last time. So if we have those yes buts, my job is to make sure that we get rid of the but and just keep the yes. So home inspection. If they're doing a home inspection, it has to be done within the number of days. I'm staying on top of that. I'm staying on top of the number of days that we can negotiate. If there's a financing contingency, I'm staying on top of the financing contingency. So all of these things, and if the days expire, deadlines are important. If the days expire, I had one transaction where the agent never sent over the home inspection addendum. Buyer was buying the house cash, had already received the HOA docs. And my client's dad was an attorney, so that was fun too. No, we're not doing anything. And he's like, well, why not? You missed your window. If you miss your window, I don't have to do a thing, okay? My client doesn't have to do a thing. Now, it's their choice, but if they don't want to, and all our T's were crossed and our I's were dotted, we didn't have to do anything, okay? So we need to follow the deadlines. And I don't monitor the other agent, but I make sure that I'm following the deadlines for my clients. I meet people as needed. So I meet the appraiser. The appraiser calls the listing agent. If the appraiser doesn't have a lockbox, I meet him at the property. Sometimes I meet him at the property. If I'm a little concerned about the appraised value, I will bring my comparables to show him why I think that house is worth what it is. We will meet the pest inspectors. And sometimes in the old days, we used to go out when the home inspection occurred. We don't really do that anymore. So I go out to the house as needed. If the house is vacant, I go out and check on the house, right? So that's part of my job as a realtor. I one time had a client who decided to sell his condo, and I basically redid it for him. I picked the cabinets, I picked the flooring, I met the contractors. He paid for all of it, and I got to decorate it. So it was a lot of fun. And we got him top dollar for that house, right? And so everybody's slightly different. Not everybody needs me to do that. If you live in your house, I'm not gonna monitor the contractor. Sometimes, if your dog is at home and we have a showing, I'll run outside and take your dog out for a walk if I need to, okay? So every situation is slightly different, but I'm there to meet people, and I'm there to get the job done of closing your house. Once all of the contingencies have been met, typically, the next thing is closing. What we see is a settlement sheet. The settlement sheet shows the buyer how much they have to bring to closing, shows the seller how much they're going to net. And so I'm looking to make sure that those numbers on that settlement statement are correct. Recently, I had a client who had taken out a second trust. It was not on the settlement statement. So I called him up. I said, hey, asked him a couple questions. Did you give the information to the settlement company about the second trust? He said, I did. called the settlement company up, they added those numbers in so that we had an accurate amount. Because you can't, by the way, you can't keep your second trust active if you don't own the house anymore. Okay, some people actually think you can do that, but that's not allowed. Okay, so we're making sure that if you paid your HOA fees and they don't have that, I'm checking on these things to make sure that you get the money that you're supposed to get and make it as smooth as possible. The goal is always to have a smooth transaction. It does not need to be contentious, right? So my goal is to make it smooth and nip any problems in the bud. And then the last thing is closing, right? So I attend closing with my clients. Make sure if there's any last minute questions. A good transaction, there should be no last minute questions because it should have all been resolved prior to the closing. And then we make sure you get your money, right? So in Virginia, Virginia's has what's called the Wet Settlement Act, and that means that settlement companies have up to 2 business days after closing to get you your money. Okay, so I will check, make sure you have your money. If you don't have your money, then I'm going to follow up with you or follow up with the settlement company to make sure you get it. Okay, and that's sort of the anatomy of a transaction. So, questions? Nothing? Nothing? All right, Vinay, go ahead.
Involved in what you actually said. I'm just nosy and curious. Like,
yeah.
How many units compared to like other years in the past have you really sold? Have you seen your numbers skyrocket? Like, what's happening?
So it's interesting. We're seeing more houses sell, but there's less inventory. So it's kind of hard to say because there are fewer houses for sale. So if there's no houses for sale, you can't sell them. And it's really interesting. So at this time of year, market has started to soften a bit. So I want buyers because a buyer can actually buy a house today. In April, you were fighting against 20 offers. Now you might be the only offer. So if you're a buyer, this is the time to buy. If you're a seller, you want to sell in the spring, after January 1st, right? In our market here. So yes.
Have you had any influence on increasing the value of the home when you met with the appraisers?
No, not necessarily influence. They do like to see the comps you provide, and sometimes we can give them a perspective of a house. If you're doing your job properly, you can give them a perspective of the house. So for example, one house might smell like cigarette smoke, which is why it's sold for much less than the other house. One house might really look nice in pictures, and it's not so nice in person, okay? And so you can give them that context that they wouldn't otherwise have because they're just looking at pictures. Yeah, so a little bit, I think, if you can say, oh, I know this one was a divorce situation, it was a desperate sale, or it smelled like cigarette smoke, or whatever the case might be, you might be able to give them that context that they wouldn't otherwise have. Yeah.
Are you still seeing houses getting multiple contracts and offers within the first day?
Yes, there is some of that. Not every house is getting multiple offers.
Right.
One-bedroom condos are lingering right now. But if a house is priced well, and here's the thing, it has to be priced according to condition. So if your house shows like a model, and you price it right, you'll probably get multiple offers. You can't expect to get top dollar for a junker, right? I mean, that's not how it works. So if a car should be going to the junkyard, you're not going to get $20,000 for it as if you would something that drove well and you could actually drive. Right, and same goes with houses. If it doesn't show well, you're still in that same boat.
Yeah, the only reason I asked, we had somebody sort of in our neighborhood, went on the market Saturday, was under contract Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And agents now, because the market is a little softer, they're not doing that. I'm going to hold it till Monday, Tuesday to see if I get offers. If they get a good offer on Saturday, they're taking it.
And they had a ton of people there. I wondered if it was the free ice cream that they were doing. They had an ice cream stand outside the house, and there was a ton of people.
Yeah.
And then Sunday night,
it was gone.
It was under contract
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, that happens.
So
yes, Anthony.
This might be a question for you, but what happens if you break the contract without having any contingencies?
Oh, so if you did that, Anthony, I'd say, oh, Anthony, we need to talk to Christina. I can't answer that question because Christina would have my head if I practiced law in Virginia without a license. So what I say to people is, if you're thinking, like if they said, well, I want out of the contract, I'm like, well, you know what, we really need to talk to an attorney so you can get advice on that. I can't advise on that because I'm not a practicing attorney.
So there's no sale line.
Good answer, right? Good answer.
Pass the test.
Good answer. Pass the test, yes.
Keep your license.
Whee! And I get to keep my real estate license, exactly.
It's on video.
Plus it's on video, yeah. Exactly. Any other questions?
So what
Yes.
happens if they miss it, like a second trust? Like in the title company doesn't.
Well, they'll find it within the next couple days, because what they do is when they go to, so the title company does a title search, and the title search is usually at the very beginning of a transaction, and then right at closing they do something called a bring down. And a bring down means they go back and they check the title records from the last time they did a title search to today, and then if it shows up there, then they're going to call and say, hey, Mr. Seller, we realize that there's a second trust on a house, and that's going to come out of your proceeds. Now, in the scenario that I had, that was fine because we had done the loan specifically so that he had the cash to buy the new house, and he had the money. But imagine if you're expecting to walk away with X number of dollars and now you're going to owe money. Then there's going to be a problem, and then we're going to call Christina again because we're going to have an issue, right?
But what if it's not a traditional sale? Foreclosure or short sale?
Well, you still have title work that gets done. So a short sale just means that the lender's going to take less than it's owed. That's a process. That's a totally different process. We can talk about short sales, but the bank has to approve it. There's a lot that goes on there. That's not a traditional sale.
Yeah, I had one that the client bought a condo in Alexandria 10 years ago. The Alexandria gave him $50,000. It's a silent lien, so there's no monthly payments on it. It's a lien recorded on the house. And a week before closing, he thought he was getting $80,000, and he forgot about the $50,000. That lien popped up. Now he's getting 30 instead of 80, and he needed 35 to buy the new house.
So now he'd come up with 5. Yeah.
Haywire from there.
So, and
He just forgot.
any other questions? Anything else?
Good job.
All right, there you go. Thank you.